film running? Or? Good morning. My name is Bob Dick. I thank you for coming, both online and here in the sanctuary. This time is set aside for question and answer period regarding the pastoral search that was recently completed. My name is Bob Dick. I serve as one of the co-chairs along with Jack Mumma. The other members of the committee seated here, we have PK Johnson, we have Patrice Miller, there's also Russ Baker, Joy Martinez, and am I missing anybody? Oh, and Lucas Franklin, I'm sorry. Sorry, Lucas. I appreciate you sitting up front so that I can hear questions, but I will repeat the questions as I hear them, just so it gets on the video. I'm going to take questions from the floor here in person first, and then I have several questions that have been received via email that I will address, but I wanted to get questions here first. So. Does anyone have a question they would like to ask? Yes.
First of all, thank you to the committee for your hard work, and it's greatly appreciated. The question has to do with the criteria that you use to filter the applications that you receive.
The question asks about criteria that the committee used in filtering the candidates that we came across. That happens to be a question that somebody asked also, so I've got an answer. I want to make sure to go by my script so I get the answer right. Yeah, the key attributes, we took our lead from the congregation survey. That's the reason we had the survey in the first place, to get a feel for what thoughts were in the minds of the people who are members here. In addition, we also received a lot of input personally. The committee made itself available in fellowship time and otherwise, and were approached by many people with their comments. The key attributes were, number one, experience. 81% of the congregation survey respondents wanted a pastor with senior pastor experience, working with other staff, or another associate pastor. So level of experience, and that was one of the criteria that the candidate profiles provided to us. Second is formal education. 69% of the congregation survey respondents wanted a pastor with a doctoral level degree. The largest portion of those wanted a Doctor of Divinity specifically, but other doctoral levels were also looked at. That doesn't mean we didn't look at people without doctoral degrees. It means we gave precedence to those who satisfied the requirement as outlined by the congregation. Third item is preaching. The greatest number of high votes on the congregation survey voted for skills and qualities desired in a new pastor for preaching. Preaching received the highest number of votes. Close behind were Bible knowledge, vision, and strategy, and empathy. So again, we looked at the preaching ability for those who passed the first cut and went into the second cut. In the first cut, the presbytery only provides certain information in the candidate profiles. when we indicate to the Presbytery we're interested in dealing further with a candidate and looking further, they provide additional information to us. Part of that are the links that the candidate includes in their profile. You can't see that in the first cut, but in the second cut you see the links. The links include access to sermons that they have in their church. So for the second evaluation, we also took into consideration preaching style and content, comfort before a group of people, communication skills, which we weren't able to look at in the first cut. Does that answer your question?
It does. Those are the criteria?
Those are the three primary criteria, yeah.
Can you tell me how many links did you access during the course of the community time?
How many links?
Links. How many pastors did you actually observe preaching, for example?
We had 83 total candidates that we looked at. The search committee made a decision that it would continue to look until all sources of candidates were exhausted. That's opposed to saying we're going to open up this for 6 months or 3 months or 1 month, whatever. We said we will exhaust all the candidates. We got 76 candidates from the CLC database that the Presbytery provides. And we had 8 additional candidates who came from other sources. Other sources are self-identification, also coming through the CLC database, but not identified by the Presbytery. And also we had Christian media ads, and we suspect, it's not specifically confirmed, that one person came through the ads. And the reason it's not confirmed is the individual who responded that we think came through the ad didn't indicate what their source was for understanding we were looking. Let's see. Give me your question again.
Just how many applicants did you actually observe?
Observe, right. We didn't have access to observe anybody except for the final 8 that we asked for. Of those 8, I personally and members of the committee looked at all of the links that provided access. Now, when you get a link, as you do here at Presbyterian Church of Barrington, you get access to the last several years worth of sermons. I myself looked at the most recent set. I also looked at Easter and Christmas to see what special things and comfort level the pastor would have. And in one case, the pastor had moved between 2 different churches, and I went back and looked at another link at their previous church just to see what that looked like. So we had the ability to look at numerous exhibitions of their communication style, comfort, creativity, and sermonizing, etc. Does that answer your question? All right. I'm sorry?
So all of us were given, present the link, the profiles, each member of the committee.
PK, could you come up here so that we can capture this?
PK, I assume that Bob wasn't doing all the observing.
No. So in this part of the process.
Right.
So the assignments for all of us in the committee, we were given all of the profiles. And part of the assignment is to read very consciously and carefully the profile and also go into the links available. And then when we came together, we all expressed very methodically our opinions and findings. And Bob, I have to commend, he had an amazing grid Excel sheet of all of the qualities, from the church, from the congregation, of what we are to look for as well. So
Great, thank you.
I hope that helps.
Yeah, I didn't understand the direction of your question. I'm sorry. I would get an email. The way it works mechanically is the presbytery asks for a point of contact at the church. Jack and I are co-chairs. We were the points of contact. I would go into the database, push a button, select a key that would generate 25 resumes at a time, 25 candidate profiles. They would magically appear in a list in front of me on my screen. I downloaded each one of the 25s. I packaged them and sent them to each of the committee members. And we would take about a week, 10 days, and have emails back and forth, observations, and then we would get together in a meeting and go through them and vote on each individual profile, yay or nay. And out of that came, when the yays were there, or even in some cases, we didn't require a majority. In cases where there was interest in somebody, we would rather defer to calling that individual and getting that information. But out of the 83 total, there were only 8 that had any interest at all. A great many of the candidates had less than 5 years of experience in pastoral care. We tended to prefer people with 5 or more years of interest, but even in the 5 to 10 year category, you don't really get very senior and very experienced, but we would look at those people. Does that satisfy your answer?
I'm going to leave, but I appreciate very much your having this opportunity for us to ask questions. I think it's a very positive.
Oh,
I really appreciate it.
that's why we ask. You have a question, yes?
It's my understanding that the presbytery discourages the selection of transitional pastors to become permanent. Is that a correct understanding? And if so, did they give you a hard time, or can you talk about that process?
The question is, the understanding is that the presbytery discourages a transitional pastor from being called to fill a senior pastor role. Is that correct? The presbytery has multiple incentives. One of them certainly is to abide by the call of a congregation. But they also, as part of a business, right, like to ensure that there are opportunities for up-and-coming pastors. And it would be inconsistent with providing opportunities for pastors to come up if it became a standard procedure for installing a temporary pastor and then calling them as the senior pastor. So it would act as a ceiling for the development of new senior pastors. So you use the word discourage. The presbytery actually has stated in their words, a minister of the word and sacrament employed in a temporary pastoral relationship is ordinarily not eligible to serve as the next installed pastor. That's a quote from the Presbytery's rule book, if you will. There are several examples in recent times of that rule being, that exception to the rule being employed. And there are several serving senior pastors today in this presbytery who have been interim pastors and converted to a senior pastor role. Your second part of the question was, did we get a hard time from the presbytery with our interest in Pastor David? To be very honest, they did their job, which was to communicate to us the unusual nature of that and their preference that we demonstrate a full and complete review of all available candidates before considering Pastor David. And before we had a conversation with Pastor David about would he accept a call, we did go through the entire process, and it was only in the last 10 days of the process that that communication happened with Pastor David. And when he affirmed that, yes, he would be open to considering it if he received a call, we came back and we had to know whether, before we voted, whether he was going to receive the call. So we came back to the committee. Jack Mumma and I met with Pastor David to get his response. We went back to the committee. We said this now becomes an option. And on that basis, having received no available qualified candidates, we issued the call for Pastor David. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Bob's actually being really nice. They gave us a really hard time at the beginning. A really hard time.
I would also add that as of Tuesday of this week, the COM, Committee on Ministry, accepted Dr. Ezekiel's call. They would never have done that had we not followed the process. But because the process was followed, the COM got on board and told Dr. Ezekiel this last Tuesday, we're on board with you coming on as our senior pastor. We have to vote now, in a couple of weeks, but the com's on board, presbytery is good to go. The committee has done the work that you all hired us to do.
And for those online, if you couldn't hear that, George added that last Tuesday, the Commission on Ministry at the Presbytery, which is the ruling body that affirms calls by congregations, did agree and did accept our decision to call Pastor David. And they were very complimentary in their issuing of that approval in the actions of the committee. And I'm not doing to be self-serving, but it's just a fact that they added in a special review that they thought we provided a very complete call. Any other questions? Okay. I will draw from some questions, and we have duplicated a number of these here. If you give me a moment. This is slightly different from something we addressed before. What are some of the qualities you see in our pastor choice which will help our congregation move in a direction to fulfill a 5-year vision? When we talked about this in the committee, we looked at growing membership in numbers. The successful candidate would be able to grow financial strength, would be able to grow community exposure and involvement as a vital component in the community. I've heard it said that PCB is the best kept secret in Barrington, and we want to make sure that our new senior pastor understands our interest in turning that around and has the ability and interaction, communication skills to make that successful. Second question, I already answered one. That's where the survey came in. I already answered question 3. This, I think I answered question 4, but I'll ask it anyway. Of the 8 making it to the second round of consideration, did a search committee member visit their church or hear any of them preach? This is the second pastor search committee I've served on. in a previous church I served on it, and it was long enough ago that you actually did travel to churches to sit in the pews and talk to congregants about the candidate being considered. Nowadays, with all preaching being on videos, it's very effective to get a vision of that. Another sense that we got, as part of the candidate profile, candidates categorize the church they're serving as less than 100 or 100 to 250, 250 to 5. Oftentimes, I would get a video and look at it, and sometimes I would catch a communion Sunday, and I would count the number of people, because in the one video I'm thinking of, people came up to the front of the church and picked up their little juice and wafer. And in one case, there were 16 people in the congregation. And given our congregation's interest in having someone experienced at a larger, more demanding environment, I thought that was not a positive attribute. I looked at several other services just to make sure, and it was a very, very small church, and just don't think that's good experience for what we're looking for. Here's a comment. This was a comment that came in an email, not a question, but it deserves an answer. This process has taken an extremely long time, right? That was the statement in the email. My response to that is to say your pastor search committee was commissioned in the first quarter of last year. And we had our first meeting on April 7th. This process from beginning to end took a little over 10 months as far as the active search process. And talking to other people and through other experiences, that's on the short end of how long it can take. There are churches that have taken years to go through this process. We did have an advantage in that we had option B, right? We exhausted all of the candidates in option A. If Pastor David wasn't either willing or capable, in our view, of satisfying the needs of this church, I don't know what we would have done. We would have had to go back to the presbytery and said, can you find us some more candidates? 76 was the number that they were able to generate, 83 in all. All right, the last question that was submitted, or that I inferred from a statement that was issued in one of the emails, and I'm quoting from the email, "This decision will include a blind/paper vote of the members. This vote should be available to all members regardless of whether you are present the day of the vote." That's the statement in the email. I'm clarifying what or who is eligible to vote. And that will probably be April 13th, I think. Only active members of PCB are eligible to vote. And I can quote chapter and verse from either our PCB bylaws or the Presbyterian laws, or in some cases the laws of the state of Illinois. Because we are considered a corporation, the state requires that we follow their rules for corporate voting. So only active members are eligible. 2, voting by proxy is not permitted. This is in the PCB bylaws and the state of Illinois, and also from the Presbytery. Email or mail-in ballots are not permitted. This again comes from the PCB bylaws or stating the state of Illinois, citing the state of Illinois. And fourth, online participation is not possible due to PCB not having the technical abilities to support this. And I'm quoting here from the rules source. Provided the technology employed allows for all members present to hear and be heard simultaneously, provision shall include the ability for those active members attending electronically to have their vote recorded in real time. The technology we have at the church does not allow supporting external voting being brought in and counted electronically in real time. We just don't have a system like that. So online participation is therefore not available. Those are the questions that I had from the emails. I thank you for the questions you had. I'll ask once again, is there any other question that you'd like the committee to address? Yes, Don.
This is not a question, it's a comment of appreciation. And I served 6 years on the Commission on Ministry. In all that 6 years, we never had an associate or an interim pastor that was approved for a permanent call. And I applaud you folks for navigating that, because I know the difficulty of doing it. And an appreciation for you keeping that option open and following and soliciting, more importantly, the support of the Commission on Ministry to do that call. Congratulations.
Well, thank you, Don. The comment was Don has served 6 years on the Commission of Ministry at the presbyterial level and understood the rigor of the process and appreciated the committee's taking the time to go through all of the necessary steps. And thank you, Don, for your comments. Any other comments or questions? Okay, not being any, this meeting is closed. Thank you.